The stranger's fist connected with her hand just as Rosa Alvarez reached for the glass of whiskey she had poured, and the sound of bones cracking echoed through the Silver Star Saloon like a gunshot in the desert night. She did not scream, though the pain that shot up her arm made her vision go white for a moment, because Rosa had learned long ago that showing weakness in front of men like Charles Garrett only made them hungrier for more. "You think you can tell me no?" Charles snarled, his breath reeking of cheap liquor and tobacco as he leaned across the bar. "You think a Mexican girl working in a saloon has the right to refuse a man like me?" Rosa cradled her right hand against her chest, feeling the unnatural angles of her fingers, the way her knuckles had collapsed inward. She had only told him she would not go upstairs with him, that she was a bartender and not one of the girls who worked the rooms above. But Charles Garrett was the foreman of the largest ranch outside Pinon, New Mexico, and he was used to taking what he wanted. The saloon had gone quiet. The piano player had stopped mid-chord. The other patrons stared into their drinks or suddenly found the walls fascinating. Rosa knew no one would help her. This was 1878, and she was a woman alone in a world that did not care much for women, especially not ones with brown skin and no family to speak for them. Charles grabbed her broken hand, squeezing it deliberately, and this time Rosa could not hold back the cry that tore from her throat. "Maybe next time you will think twice before acting above your station," he said, shoving her backward. She stumbled against the shelves of bottles behind the bar, sending several crashing to the floor. Then the saloon doors swung open, and a man walked in wearing trail dust, and the kind of silence that made dangerous men pause. Rosa, through her haze of pain, noticed him immediately. He was tall, with shoulders that filled his worn leather jacket, dark hair that needed cutting, and eyes the color of storm clouds over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance, Rosa clutching her hand, Charles standing over her like a rooster in a henhouse, the broken glass glittering on the floor. "I am looking for a drink," the stranger said, his voice low and calm, "but it seems like I walked into something else entirely." "This does not concern you, Drifter," Charles said, turning to face him. "Best move along before you find trouble." The stranger walked to the bar, his boots crunching on broken glass, and looked at Rosa. His eyes softened when he saw how she held her hand. "Madam, that looks like it needs tending to. Would you like me to take you to the doctor?" Rosa wanted to say yes, wanted to run from this place and never come back, but she needed this job. She had nowhere else to go, no family to take her in. Her father had died 2 years ago and her mother had passed when Rosa was just a child. "I will be fine," she whispered, though tears streamed down her face from the pain. "She said she is fine," Charles said. "Now get out before I throw you out." The stranger did not look at Charles. He kept his eyes on Rosa. "I have set bones before, worked with horses on the trail, learned from a medicine woman up in Colorado Territory. I can help you if you will let me." Charles made a sound of disgust and grabbed the stranger's shoulder, spinning him around. That was his mistake. The stranger moved like water, smooth and inevitable, catching Charles's wrist and twisting it just enough to make the foreman drop to his knees with a gasp. "I did not come here looking for a fight," the stranger said quietly. "I came for a drink, but I will not stand by while a man hurts a woman." He released Charles, who scrambled backward, his face red with humiliation and rage. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, stranger. Do you know who I am?" "I do not care who you are," the stranger said. "Leave now or I will make you leave." Charles looked around the saloon, perhaps expecting support, but no one met his eyes. The other patrons had seen what the stranger could do with just one simple movement, and they were not eager to test him further. Charles stood, straightening his jacket with shaking hands. "This is not over," he said, pointing at Rosa. "And you are finished in this town. No one will hire you after tonight." He stormed out of the saloon, slamming the doors behind him. The piano player tentatively started playing again, and the low murmur of conversation resumed. The stranger turned back to Rosa, his expression gentle. "My name is Mason Rhodes. Will you let me help you?" Rosa nodded, not trusting her voice. Mason came around the bar, stepping carefully over the broken glass, and gently took her injured hand in his. His touch was surprisingly soft for someone with such calloused, work-worn hands. He examined the damage carefully, his jaw tightening as he saw the extent of it. "3 fingers broken, possibly the metacarpals in your palm as well," he said. "This needs to be set properly, or you will never have full use of this hand again. Is there a doctor in town?" "Dr. Henderson," Rosa managed to say. "But he will not see me. He does not treat Mexicans after dark." Mason's eyes flashed with anger, but his voice remained calm. "Then I will do it myself. Do you have a room somewhere? Somewhere quiet where I can work?" The saloon owner, a heavy-set man named Dutch Miller, spoke up from the end of the bar. "She has a room out back, behind the kitchen." "But Rosa, if you leave your post tonight, I cannot promise your job will be here tomorrow." "She cannot pour drinks with a broken hand," Mason said, his tone making it clear what he thought of Dutch's priorities. "Where is this room?" Rosa led him through the kitchen, where the cook was scraping burnt beans from a pot, and out into the small courtyard behind the saloon. Her room was barely more than a shed, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a trunk that held all her possessions. But it was hers, and it was clean, and she had made it as comfortable as she could with the little money she earned. Mason helped her sit on the bed, then looked around the sparse room. "I need cloth for bandaging, straight pieces of wood for splints, and whiskey. Also, something for you to bite down on. This is going to hurt." Rosa used her good hand to pull a bottle of whiskey from under her bed, along with a clean sheet she had been saving for special occasions. Mason tore the sheet into strips with his strong hands, moving with practiced efficiency. He went outside and returned with several thin pieces of wood he had found in the courtyard, which he broke into appropriate lengths. "I worked for a ranch in Colorado for 3 years, he explained as he prepared the materials. "The owner's wife was half Arapaho, and she taught me about healing. She said the spirits gave us knowledge so we could help each other, and it was a sin to hoard that knowledge." He poured whiskey over his hands, then over the wooden splints. "I am not as skilled as she was, but I have set bones before. Mostly horses and cattle, but a few men too after bar fights and accidents on the trail." He sat beside her on the bed, his presence solid and reassuring. "I need you to trust me, Rosa. This will hurt worse than when he broke it, but only for a moment. Then I will splint it and the pain will ease. Can you be brave for me?" Rosa looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw genuine concern there, not pity or desire or any of the other things she usually saw in men's eyes. She nodded. "I can be brave." Mason folded a leather strap he took from his belt and handed it to her. "Bite down on this." Then, with infinite gentleness, he took her broken hand in both of his. "On 3. 1, 2, he pulled and manipulated the bones on 2 before she could tense up, and Rosa bit down hard on the leather as white-hot agony shot through her hand and up her arm. She heard herself making sounds, animal sounds of pain, but Mason's hands never wavered. He worked quickly, feeling the bones with his fingertips, aligning them by touch and instinct. It felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute or two before he began wrapping the splints around her fingers, binding them in place with the strips of sheet. When he finally finished, Rosa was shaking and covered in cold sweat, but the worst of the pain had subsided to a dull, throbbing ache. Mason poured whiskey over the bandaging, then offered her the bottle. "Drink. It will help." She drank, coughing as the liquid burned down her throat. Mason took the bottle and drank as well, then set it aside. "You did well," he said. "Better than most men I have seen." "Thank you," Rosa whispered. "I do not have money to pay you." "I do not want your money," Mason said. He stood and looked around the small room again. "That man, Charles Garrett, will he come back?" "Probably," Rosa said. "He is the foreman of the Triple R Ranch, the biggest spread in the county. He has 20 men working under him, and he is used to getting his way." Mason was quiet for a moment. "I rode into Pinon looking for work." "Do you know if any of the ranches are hiring?" "The Triple R is always hiring," Rosa said, "but I would not recommend it, not after tonight." "What about the other ranches?" Rosa thought for a moment. "There is the Barham, owned by Sarah Brennan. Her husband died last year, and she has been trying to run the place with just a couple of hands. She is a good woman, but she does not have much money to pay." "Where can I find her?" "Her ranch is about 5 miles north of town, near Pinon Creek, but it is dark now. You should wait until morning." Mason nodded. "Then I will wait. Do you have family in town? Someone who can stay with you tonight?" Rosa shook her head. "I am alone. My father died 2 years ago. He worked at the silver mine until his lungs gave out." Something passed across Mason's face, a shadow of old pain. "I am sorry. I lost my parents young too. A fever took them both when I was 15. I have been on my own since then." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, two people who understood what it meant to be alone in a hard world. Then Mason stood. "I will sleep in the courtyard tonight, outside your door. If Charles comes back, he will have to go through me first." "You do not have to do that," Rosa protested. "I know I do not have to," Mason said, "but I am going to anyway. Try to rest. I will be right outside if you need anything." He left, closing the door gently behind him. Rosa lay back on her bed, cradling her bandaged hand against her chest. She could hear Mason settling himself outside, the creak of leather as he sat down, the soft sounds of him making himself comfortable. It had been a long time since anyone had looked after her, and she was surprised to find tears running down her face again, but this time not from pain. She woke several times during the night, jolted awake by the throbbing in her hand, and each time she heard Mason moving outside, keeping watch. Once she heard him humming softly, a tune she did not recognize but found comforting. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky outside her small window in shades of pink and gold, she rose carefully and opened her door. Mason was sitting with his back against the wall, his hat pulled low over his eyes, but he looked up immediately when the door opened. "How is the hand?" he asked. "It hurts," Rosa admitted, "but not as badly as last night." "That is good. The pain should lessen each day now that the bones are set properly. You will need to keep it splinted for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. And you will need to move your fingers gently each day, once the initial swelling goes down, to keep them from stiffening up." He stood, stretching the stiffness from his back. "I am going to ride out to the Barham and see about that job. Will you be safe here during the day? Dutch will not let Charles cause trouble in the saloon during daylight," Rosa said. "He is afraid of losing his license." "It is only at night that things get dangerous," Mason frowned. "Still, I do not like leaving you here, but I need work, and I need to stay close by to check on your hand as it heals." He paused, studying her face in the morning light. "You have courage, Rosa Alvarez. More than most people I have met. Do not let men like Charles Garrett make you forget that." He walked to where his horse was tied, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor. Mason swung into the saddle with easy grace, tipped his hat to Rosa, and rode out of the courtyard. Rosa watched him go, wondering if she would ever see him again, wondering why she cared so much about a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere to help her. The day passed slowly. Dutch let her work, but only doing tasks she could manage with one hand, wiping down tables, sweeping the floor, stocking shelves. Her hand throbbed constantly, but it was a manageable pain now, nothing like the agony of the night before. Several patrons asked what happened, and she told them she had fallen, an obvious lie that no one believed but no one questioned either. Charles did not come to the saloon that day, but his presence hung over the place like a storm cloud. Rosa heard the other patrons talking in low voices about the stranger who had made the R foreman back down, speculating about who he was and where he had come from. She heard her own name mentioned, usually followed by crude laughter or knowing looks, and she tried to ignore it. She had lived in Pinyon long enough to know how quickly gossip spread and how little it took to ruin a woman's reputation. The afternoon was fading into evening when Mason returned. He walked into the saloon and straight to where Rosa was carefully polishing glasses with her good hand. "I got the job," he said. "Mrs. Brennan hired me on the spot. She needs help with the cattle and I have experience. The pay is not much, but it includes a bunk in the bunkhouse and 3 meals a day." "I am glad," Rosa said, and meant it. "Sarah Brennan is a good woman. She will treat you fairly." Mason nodded. "She also said she knows you, that your father worked for her husband at one time. She asked after you, wanted to know if you were doing well." Rosa felt a pang in her chest. She had not seen Sarah since the funeral, had been too proud to ask for help even though she was struggling. "Tell her I am well when you see her next. Tell her yourself," Mason said. "She invited you to come to the ranch for Sunday dinner this week. She said it has been too long since she has had another woman to talk to." He paused. "She also said that if you are looking for different work, she could use someone to help with the cooking and cleaning at the ranch house. It would not pay much, but it would be honest work, and you would not have to deal with men like Charles Garrett." Rosa felt hope flutter in her chest like a bird, but she pushed it down. "I cannot cook or clean with a broken hand." "Not right now," Mason agreed, "but in a few weeks when it has healed enough. Mrs. Brennan said the offer stands whenever you are ready." He glanced around the saloon, at the rough men drinking and playing cards, at Dutch watching them from behind the bar with suspicious eyes. "You deserve better than this, Rosa." "I make do with what I have," Rosa said quietly. "I always have." Mason looked like he wanted to say more, but Dutch called out from across the room. "Rhodes, you buying a drink or just here to chat up my bartender?" "I will take a whiskey," Mason said. He waited while Rosa poured it with her left hand, the movement awkward but manageable. When she handed him the glass, his fingers brushed against hers, and she felt a jolt of something that had nothing to do with pain. "How are you getting back to your room tonight?" Mason asked. "It is a long walk from the saloon to the courtyard when it is dark." "I will manage," Rosa said. "I will wait and walk you," Mason said firmly. "I need to check on your hand anyway, make sure the splints are still secure." He sat at the bar nursing his whiskey for the next few hours, turning away several men who tried to start conversations with him. Rosa worked around him, hyper-aware of his presence, of the way he watched the room with quiet vigilance. When Dutch finally called last orders, Mason stood and waited by the door while Rosa cleaned up and hung her apron. They walked through the dark streets of Pinyon together, and Rosa was grateful for his solid presence beside her. The town was quiet at this hour, most people already home and in bed. The stars overhead were brilliant in the clear desert sky, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage and dust. "I have been thinking about your hand," Mason said as they walked. "In a few days, when the initial swelling has gone down, I will need to check the bones again, make sure they are healing straight." Mrs. Brennan said I can come into town on Sunday mornings before the ranch work starts. Would it be all right if I stopped by to check on you? Yes, Rosa said. I would like that. They reached her room and Mason examined her hand carefully by lamplight. The bandaging was still secure and the swelling had not increased. It looks good, he said. You are healing well. Keep it elevated when you can and try not to use it at all for the first week. Thank you, Mason, Rosa said. For everything. He smiled and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. You are welcome, Rosa. I will see you on Sunday. He tipped his hat and walked away into the night, heading back to the bar and ranch. Rosa went inside her small room and lay down on her bed, holding her injured hand against her chest and thinking about storm gray eyes and gentle hands that knew how to heal. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Rosa worked at the saloon, managing as best she could with one hand, while her broken bones slowly knitted together beneath Mason's careful bandaging. Each Sunday morning, he rode into town and came to her room, where he would unwrap the splints and examine her hand with gentle thoroughness, checking for signs of infection or improper healing. You are doing very well, he told her on the third Sunday, nearly 3 weeks after Charles had broken her hand. The bones are setting straight. You should regain full use of your hand, though it may ache in cold weather for the rest of your life. That is a small price to pay, Rosa said. She had been watching him as he worked, noticing the concentration on his face, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the strength in his hands. How did you learn to be so gentle? Most cowboys I know are rough with everything, even their horses. Mason was quiet for a moment as he rewrapped her hand with fresh bandaging. My mother taught me, he said finally. She said that gentleness was not weakness, it was strength under control. She said the world had enough cruelty in it, and that we should add to the kindness wherever we could. He secured the last of the bandaging and looked up at Rosa. She died when I was 15, but I have tried to live by what she taught me. She sounds like she was a wonderful woman, Rosa said softly. She was, Mason agreed. I wish you could have met her. I think she would have liked you. Their eyes met and held, and Rosa felt her breath catch in her throat. There was something in the way Mason looked at her, something warm and deep that made her heart race. But then he looked away, gathering up the used bandaging, and the moment passed. How is the work at the bar, Em? Rosa asked, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. Good, Mason said. Hard but good. Mrs. Brennan is struggling to keep the ranch running with just 3 hands, but she is determined. She reminds me of you, actually. Tough and brave, refusing to give up even when things are difficult. I am not brave, Rosa protested. I am just surviving. That takes bravery too, Mason said. He stood to leave, then hesitated. Rosa, have you thought any more about Mrs. Brennan's offer, the job at the ranch house? I think about it, Rosa admitted, but I am afraid. What if my hand does not heal properly? What if I cannot do the work? Your hand is healing beautifully, Mason said. And even if it were not, there are many things you could do at the ranch. Mrs. Brennan needs help with the accounts as well as the cooking and cleaning. She said your father taught you to read and write, which is more than most people around here can say. He did, Rosa said. He believed education was important even for a daughter, especially for a daughter, he used to say. He was a wise man, Mason said. Think about it, Rosa. You do not have to decide right away, but the offer stands. After he left, Rosa sat on her bed and thought about what he had said. She had been at the Silver Star Saloon for 2 years, ever since her father died, and she needed money for food and rent. It was not a good place, but it was what she knew. The idea of leaving, of starting something new at the bar, was both thrilling and terrifying. That night at the saloon, Charles Garrett came back. Rosa saw him the moment he walked through the doors, surrounded by 3 of his men from the Triple R Ranch. Her blood went cold. She had hoped he had forgotten about her, moved on to easier prey, but she should have known better. Men like Charles never forgot a slight, never let go of a grudge. He walked to the bar and leaned across it, his eyes hard and mean. "I will take a whiskey, and you will pour it with your good hand, girl, because I would hate for you to spill it on me." Rosa's hands shook as she poured the drink, using her left hand because her right was still splinted. Some of the whiskey splashed onto the bar, and Charles's face darkened. "I said do not spill it," he growled. "Maybe you are too clumsy to work in a saloon anymore. Maybe Dutch should fire you and get someone who can do the job properly." "Leave her alone, Charles," Dutch said from the other end of the bar, but his voice lacked conviction. He did not want trouble with the Triple R Ranch. "I am just having a conversation with the lady," Charles said, his tone mocking. "Nothing wrong with that, is there?" He picked up the glass and drank, then slammed it down on the bar hard enough to make Rosa jump. "Although I hear she is not much of a lady anymore, not since she started letting that drifter Rhodes into her room at night." Rosa felt her face burn with humiliation. "Mason is a gentleman. He has only been helping me with my hand." "Is that what they are calling it now?" Charles laughed, and his men laughed with him. "Helping with your hand? I bet he helps you with all sorts of things, does he not?" "That is enough," Rosa said, her voice shaking with anger now instead of fear. "You broke my hand because I would not go upstairs with you. Do not pretend this is about anything else." Charles's smile disappeared. "You are right. This is about you learning your place. And your place is not with some nobody cowboy who rides into town thinking he can protect you." "Where is your hero tonight, Rosa? Why is he not here to save you?" "He is working," Rosa said. "Honest work at an honest ranch, which is more than you can say." Charles's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, pulling her forward against the bar. "You have a smart mouth for someone in your position. Maybe I need to teach you another lesson. Let her go." The voice came from the doorway, calm and cold as winter snow. Mason stood there, still dusty from the trail, his hat shadowing his eyes. He must have ridden hard from the barroom to get here at this hour. "Well, well," Charles said, though he released Rosa's wrist. "The hero arrives. I was just telling Rosa here that you were not around to protect her." "I am here now," Mason said. He walked forward, moving with that same fluid grace Rosa had noticed the first night. "And I am asking you nicely to leave her alone." "Or what?" Charles stood, his 3 men standing with him. "There are 4 of us and 1 of you, Rhodes. Those are not good odds, even for a man who thinks he is tough." "I do not want to fight," Mason said, "but I will if I have to." The saloon had gone quiet again, everyone watching to see what would happen. Rosa's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She did not want Mason to get hurt because of her. "Mason, do not," she said. "It is not worth it." "You are worth it," Mason said, not taking his eyes off Charles. "You are worth 10 of him." Charles's face turned purple with rage. "No one talks to me like that. Boys, I think it is time we taught this drifter some respect." The 4 of them moved forward, and Mason set his feet, his hands loose and ready at his sides. But before the first punch could be thrown, the saloon doors opened again and Sarah Brennan walked in, followed by 2 of her ranch hands. "That is enough," Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. She was a handsome woman in her 40s, with gray streaked hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent a lifetime in the sun. "Charles Garrett, you and your men leave this saloon right now, or I will go to the sheriff and press charges for assault." "This does not concern you, Sarah," Charles said. "It concerns me when one of my employees is being threatened by a bully and his thugs," Sarah replied. "Mason Rhodes works for me, and I will not stand by while you attack him. Now get out." Charles looked around, perhaps weighing his options, but the mood in the saloon had shifted. The other patrons were watching him with disapproval now, and even Dutch looked like he was ready to side with Sarah. Charles was a foreman with some power, but Sarah Brennan owned land and had connections in the county. She was not someone to cross lightly. "This is not over," Charles said, pointing at Mason. "You and I will settle this eventually." "Whenever you are ready," Mason said calmly. Charles and his men left, shoving through the doors with unnecessary force. Sarah walked to the bar, her face concerned as she looked at Rosa. "Are you all right, dear?" "Yes, thank you," Rosa said. "I am sorry you had to come all this way." "Do not apologize," Sarah said. "Mason rode back to the ranch and told me what was happening. I could not sit by and do nothing." She studied Rosa for a moment. "That offer I made still stands, Rosa. In fact, I think it would be better for everyone if you came to work at the bar as soon as possible. Charles Garrett will not stop harassing you as long as you work here." Rosa looked at Mason, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked at Dutch, who was studiously avoiding her eyes, and at the other patrons who had done nothing to help her. She thought about her small room behind the kitchen, about the fear she felt every night when she walked home in the dark, about the way Charles and men like him looked at her. "Yes," she said. "I would like to work at the bar if the offer is still good." Sarah smiled. "The offer is still good. Can you be ready to leave tomorrow?" "I can be ready tonight," Rosa said. "Then tonight it is," Sarah said. "Mason, help Rosa gather her things. We will wait for you outside." 20 minutes later, Rosa was riding in Sarah's wagon toward the bar ranch, with Mason riding alongside on his bay gelding. All her possessions fit into a single trunk, which seemed both sad and liberating at the same time. She was leaving behind the only life she had known for the past 2 years, but she was riding toward something new, something that felt like hope. The ranch house was modest but well kept, a long, low building made of adobe with a wide porch and a red tile roof. Sarah showed Rosa to a small bedroom off the kitchen, clean and neat with a real bed and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "This will be your room," Sarah said. "You will take your meals with me in the dining room, and your work will be light until your hand is fully healed. I need help with the accounts more than anything else right now. My husband always handled the numbers, and I have been struggling to keep track of everything." "I can do that," Rosa said. "My father taught me arithmetic along with reading and writing." "Good," Sarah said. She glanced out the window where Mason was unsaddling his horse in the barn. "He is a good man, that one, honest and hard-working. He cares about you, you know." Rosa felt her face heat. "He has been very kind to me." "It is more than kindness," Sarah said gently. "I have seen the way he looks at you, and the way you look at him. But that is your business, not mine. I just wanted you to know that if something develops between you two, you have my blessing. The bar is a place where people can be happy if they choose to be." Over the following weeks, Rosa settled into life at the bar ranch. She worked in the ranch house, helping Sarah with the accounts and gradually taking over the cooking and cleaning as her hand healed. Mason checked on her hand every few days, unwrapping the splints and examining the bones with his careful, gentle touch. "It is healing perfectly," he told her 6 weeks after Charles had broken it. "I think we can remove the splints now, but you should still be careful with it for a while. The bones are set, but they are not as strong as they will be in a few more months." He unwrapped the bandaging slowly, and Rosa watched as her hand emerged, pale and thin from being bound for so long. The fingers were straight, the knuckles properly aligned. When Mason told her to try moving them, she did so carefully, marveling that they worked at all. "You saved my hand," she said softly. "If not for you, I would never have been able to use it again." "You saved yourself," Mason said. "You were brave enough to let me help you, and patient enough to let it heal properly. All I did was set the bones. They were sitting on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the desert in shades of orange and purple. It had become their habit to sit together in the evenings after the day's work was done, talking about small things or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. "Mason," Rosa said hesitantly, "why did you help me that night? You did not know me. You had no reason to get involved." Mason was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the horizon. "I told you about my mother, how she taught me to be gentle, but I did not tell you about my father. He was a hard man, quick to anger and quicker to use his fists. He hit my mother sometimes when he had been drinking. I was too young to stop him, too small to protect her. When the fever took them both, I grieved for my mother, but I cannot say I grieved much for him." He turned to look at Rosa, his storm-gray eyes intense. "When I walked into that saloon and saw Charles hurting you, I saw my father. And I decided that I would never be like him, never stand by while a man hurt a woman. Not ever again." Rosa reached out with her newly freed hand and took his, lacing their fingers together. "You are nothing like your father. You are good and kind and gentle. Your mother would be proud of the man you became." Mason squeezed her hand carefully, mindful of her still healing bones. "Rosa, I need to tell you something. These past weeks, getting to know you, spending time with you, it has made me happier than I have been in years. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and I find myself thinking about you all the time. I know I am just a cowboy with nothing to my name but a horse and a saddle, but I would like to court you properly, if you would allow it." Rosa felt joy bloom in her chest like a flower opening to the sun. "I would like that very much. I have been thinking about you too, Mason, more than I probably should." He smiled, that rare smile that transformed his face, and leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Rosa did not want to pull away. She met him halfway, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. They courted properly after that, with Sarah acting as chaperone and everyone on the ranch watching with approval. Mason brought Rosa wildflowers from the desert, and she baked him pies with the apples from Sarah's small orchard. They rode together across the ranch lands on Sunday afternoons, and Mason taught her about the cattle and the horses and the harsh beauty of the New Mexico desert. One evening, about 3 months after Rosa had come to the bar, Mason found her sitting on the porch with tears running down her face. He sat beside her immediately, concern written across his features. "What is wrong? Is it your hand? Is it hurting?" "No, my hand is fine," Rosa said, wiping at her tears. "I just received a letter. Charles Garrett was killed yesterday. He was drunk and got into a fight with one of his own men over a card game. The man shot him." Mason was silent for a moment. "How do you feel about that?" "I do not know," Rosa admitted. "I hated him for what he did to me, but I do not wish death on anyone, and I keep thinking that if you had fought him that night in the saloon, it might have been you who died instead." Mason pulled her close, and Rosa rested her head against his shoulder. "But it was not me," he said softly. "I am right here and I am not going anywhere. Promise me," Rosa said. "Promise me you will not take foolish risks, that you will not throw your life away." "I promise," Mason said. "I have too much to live for now." As the months passed, Rosa's hand healed completely, with only a faint ache in cold weather to remind her of that terrible night. She took over most of the ranch house duties, working alongside Sarah and becoming her friend as well as her employee. The bar began to prosper under Sarah's management, with Mason proving himself to be an invaluable hand. 1 year after the night Mason had set her broken bones, he asked Rosa to marry him. They were sitting on their porch, watching another desert sunset when Mason pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a small turquoise stone. Rosa Alvarez, you are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You have made this past year the happiest of my life. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my days trying to make you as happy as you have made me? Yes, Rosa said through happy tears. Yes, I will marry you. They were married in the small church in Pinon 2 months later, with Sarah standing up as Rosa's witness and the other Barham Ranch hands standing up for Mason. Rosa wore a simple white dress that Sarah helped her sew, and Mason wore his best shirt and a new black vest. The priest, Father Miguel, performed the ceremony in both English and Spanish, honoring Rosa's heritage. After the wedding, Sarah surprised them with the news that she was giving them 20 acres of the Barham to build their own home. You have both worked hard to make this ranch successful, she said. And I am getting older. It is time I had good neighbors I can trust. Mason and Rosa built a small adobe house on their land, working together with the other ranch hands to raise the walls and put on the roof. It was modest but sturdy, with a bedroom, a kitchen, and a large main room where they could entertain guests. Rosa planted a garden with vegetables and herbs, while Mason built a small corral for the horses he planned to raise. Their first child, a son, was born in the spring of 1881, 3 years after that night in the Silver Star Saloon. They named him Samuel, after Mason's father, because Mason said every man deserved a second chance at redemption, even if it was only through a name. Samuel was a healthy, loud baby with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes. Rosa watched Mason with their son and saw the gentleness his mother had taught him, the care he took with every small task. He changed diapers and walked the floor with Samuel when he cried at night. He sang lullabies in a surprisingly good voice and made silly faces to make the baby smile. "You are a wonderful father," Rosa told him one night as he rocked Samuel to sleep. "I am trying to be the father I wish I had," Mason said softly, "and the husband your father would have wanted for you." "My father would have loved you," Rosa said, "just as I do." Their ranch prospered slowly but steadily. Mason proved to have a gift for training horses, and word spread that the horses from the Rhodes Ranch were the best in the county. Rosa kept the accounts and managed the household, her fully healed hand working as well as it ever had. The only reminder of that night was the faint ache in cold weather, which Mason would massage away with his gentle touch. 2 years after Samuel was born, Rosa gave birth to a daughter they named Elena, after Rosa's mother. Elena had her father's height and her mother's dark eyes, and from the moment she could walk, she followed her older brother everywhere. Sarah Brennan remained a close friend and neighbor, often coming over for dinner or inviting Rosa and Mason to the main ranch house. She watched Samuel and Elena grow with the fond eye of a grandmother, and when Sarah died peacefully in her sleep in 1889, she left the Barham Ranch to Mason and Rosa in her will, trusting them to care for it as she had. "She gave us so much," Rosa said at Sarah's funeral, tears streaming down her face. "A home, a chance, a future. I will never forget her kindness. We will honor her memory by taking care of this land and the people who work it," Mason said, his arm around his wife's shoulders. That is what she would have wanted. They combined the Rhodes Ranch with the Barham, creating one of the most successful cattle and horse operations in the county. Mason hired good hands and treated them fairly, paying them well and giving them days off to spend with their families. Rosa opened the ranch house to anyone who needed help, feeding hungry travelers and offering shelter to families passing through. Samuel grew into a serious, hard-working young man who loved the ranch and the animals. Elena grew into a spirited, independent girl who could ride as well as any cowboy, and who was not afraid to speak her mind. Mason and Rosa had 2 more children, another boy named Michael and a girl named Catherine, and the ranch house was always full of noise and laughter and love. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Mason and Rosa sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the desert as they had done countless times before. Their children were grown now, with Samuel helping to run the ranch, and Alina married to a good man who worked at the general store in Pinon. Michael was studying to be a teacher, and Catherine was courting a young rancher from the next county over. "You ever think about that night?" Rosa asked, holding up her right hand and flexing the fingers. "The night you set my broken bones. I think about it often," Mason said. "It was the night my life changed. The night I met the woman who would become my everything." "Charles Garrett thought he was breaking me that night," Rosa said softly. "But instead, he brought me to you. He thought he was showing his power, but all he did was show how cruel he was. And you showed me that there was still kindness in the world, still gentleness and care." Mason took her hand, the one he had healed so carefully all those years ago, and brought it to his lips. "Your hand had been broken by a man's cruelty, and I set the bones and waited for healing. But you healed me too, Rosa. You healed the broken parts inside me that I did not even know were there. You taught me what love could be, what family could be. You gave me a home and children and a reason to be grateful for every sunrise." "We healed each other," Rosa said, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we built a good life together." "The best life," Mason agreed. They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. From inside the house came the sound of laughter as their grandchildren played, the next generation growing up surrounded by love and safety, and the knowledge that they were cherished. Rosa thought about the scared young woman she had been, alone in the world and working in a saloon, her hand shattered by a cruel man's anger. She thought about the quiet cowboy who had walked through those saloon doors and changed everything, who had seen her pain and chosen to help, who had set her broken bones with gentle hands and patient skill. That night had been the darkest of her life, but it had led to all of this: a loving husband, beautiful children and grandchildren, a successful ranch, a community of friends and neighbors who respected them. It had led to mornings waking up beside Mason, to evenings spent on this porch watching sunsets, to a lifetime of small kindnesses and deep love. "I love you, Mason Rhodes," Rosa said softly. "I love you, Rosa Rhodes," Mason replied, and kissed her hand again, the hand he had healed so long ago. They had grown old together, their hair gray and their faces weathered by years in the desert sun. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young woman with the broken hand and the cowboy who had known how to heal it. 2 souls who had found each other in the darkness and built a light that would shine for generations. The desert wind blew soft and warm around them, carrying the scent of sage and horses and home. Inside the house, their grandchildren called for them to come tell stories, to share the tales of how the ranch came to be, how their grandparents met and fell in love. Mason stood and offered his hand to Rosa, pulling her gently to her feet. Together they walked inside, ready to tell the story one more time, the story of how cruelty had brought them together and how love had made them whole. Years continued to pass in a gentle rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Samuel took over more of the ranch operations as Mason grew older, but Mason still rode out with the hands most days, unable to give up the work he loved. Rosa tended her ever-expanding garden and taught her granddaughters to cook and keep accounts, passing on the skills her own father had taught her. The town of Pinon grew and changed around them. The Silver Star Saloon eventually closed, unable to compete with the new establishments that sprang up as the railroad came through. Dutch Miller died of a heart attack, and the building was torn down to make way for a bank. Rosa felt no sadness at its passing. That part of her life belonged to a different person, a different time. Mason's reputation as a horse trainer spread beyond the county, and people came from as far away as Santa Fe and Albuquerque to buy his animals. He had a way with even the most difficult horses, a patience and gentleness that won their trust. Rosa would watch him working in the corral and see the same care he had shown when setting her broken hand all those years ago, the same focus and dedication. "Everything you touch, you make better," she told him once. "Not everything," Mason said with a smile, "but I try to leave things better than I found them. That is all any of us can do." When Mason turned 60, the family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. All 4 of their children were there with their own families, and the house overflowed with grandchildren ranging from babies to teenagers. They roasted a steer, and Alina made her famous apple pies, and as the sun set, everyone gathered on the expanded porch to sing and tell stories. Samuel stood and raised his glass. "To my father, who taught me that being a man means being gentle, being kind, and standing up for what is right. To my mother, who taught me that strength comes in many forms, and that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to do what must be done despite it. Thank you for showing us what love looks like." Everyone drank, and there were tears in Rosa's eyes as she looked around at the family they had created, the legacy they would leave behind. Mason squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back, feeling the bones that had been broken and healed as strong now as they had ever been. "We did well," Mason whispered to her. "We did very well," Rosa agreed. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the ranch was quiet, Mason and Rosa sat on their porch one last time. The stars overhead were brilliant, the same stars that had shone on that terrible night when Rosa's hand had been broken, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the births of their children. "You have any regrets?" Rosa asked. Mason thought for a long moment. "I regret that I could not save my mother from my father. I regret that there is still so much cruelty in the world, so much pain that I cannot fix. But I do not regret a single moment with you, Rosa. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." "And being loved by you has been mine," Rosa said. They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who had shared a lifetime and still found joy in simply being together. The ranch that had started as Sarah Brennan's dream and become theirs was thriving, would continue to thrive under Samuel's care. Their children were happy and healthy, their grandchildren growing strong and free. They had built something lasting from the ashes of a painful night in a saloon. Mason died quietly in his sleep 5 years later, at the age of 65. He went to bed beside Rosa one night and simply did not wake up. The doctor said it was his heart, that it had finally given out, but Rosa knew better. Mason's heart had never been weak. It had been the strongest part of him, the part that had seen a frightened woman with a broken hand and chosen to help her, that had loved her faithfully for more than 40 years. She sat beside his body as the sun rose, holding the hand that had healed her so many years ago. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, for helping me, for loving me. Thank you for every sunrise we watched together, every child we raised, every moment of this beautiful life we built. I will love you until my last breath, and then beyond." They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple marker that read, "Mason Rhodes, 1852–1917. Beloved husband, father, and friend, he lived with gentleness and died with grace." Rosa lived another 10 years, watching her children take over the ranch and her grandchildren grow into adults. She spent her days in her garden and her evenings on the porch, always leaving Mason's chair empty beside her. She told stories to anyone who would listen about the cowboy who had walked into a saloon and changed her life, who had set her broken bones with such care and patience. On a warm spring evening in 1927, Rosa Alvarez Rhodes died peacefully in the same bed where she and Mason had slept for more than 40 years. She was 91 years old. Her children were with her, holding her hands, and her last words were, "I am coming, Mason. I am coming home." They buried her beside her husband on the hill overlooking the ranch with a marker that read, Rosa Alvarez Rhodes, 1856–1927. Beloved wife, mother, and friend, she lived with courage and died with love. The ranch continued for generations after them, passed down through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew soft across the desert, people said you could sometimes see two figures sitting on the porch of the old ranch house, holding hands and watching the sunset, their love enduring beyond death, beyond time, a testament to the healing power of gentleness and the strength of two hearts that had chosen to beat as one. The story of Rosa and Mason became legend in Piñon, told and retold until no one was quite sure anymore what was fact and what had grown in the telling. But the essential truth remained. A woman's hand had been broken by a man's cruelty. A cowboy had set the bones and waited for healing, and from that terrible night had grown a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. Their great-great-grandchildren still worked the Rhodes Ranch more than a century later. Raising cattle and horses on the same land Rosa and Mason had claimed as their own. And on the hill overlooking it all, two weathered markers stood side by side, testament to two lives well lived and a love story for the ages. The desert wind blew eternal across the land, carrying with it the whispers of their story, ensuring that as long as the sun rose over New Mexico and set in shades of orange and purple across the western sky, people would remember Rosa and Mason Rhodes. They would remember that even in the darkest times, even when cruelty seemed to triumph, kindness could prevail. They would remember that broken things could be healed, that patience and gentleness could work miracles, and that true love, once found, never truly ended. And so the story lived on, passed from generation to generation, a reminder that every life touches others in ways both seen and unseen, and that the choices we make in moments of crisis can echo through the years, shaping not just our own lives but the lives of all who come after us. Rosa's hand had been broken by a man's cruelty on a dark night in 1878. Mason had set the bones and waited for healing. And in that waiting, in that patient care and gentle touch, they had found something neither had been looking for but both desperately needed. A love that would sustain them through all the trials and joys of life. A partnership built on respect and trust and tenderness. A home not just in a place but in each other's hearts. That was their legacy. That was their gift to the world, and that was why their story would never be forgotten.